Alrighty, guys, what the heck is up? We're back with another solo podcast. Nick still taking a break from World of Warcraft. He should be coming back in some point, so we'll get him back in here whenever we do that. I'll be lining up some guests probably for future episodes, but right now, still just solo podcasts. As for content for this channel, I do plan to start doing some Mythic Plus analysis videos, continuing on with the raid boss by boss series guides as well. However, probably not going to be putting up classic content. I have been playing classic in an okay amount and am enjoying playing with my guild. However, not really my thing, unfortunately. All right, so beyond that, I got a big shout out to all of our Patreons. We got Arui, Lunor, Nacro, Nevernude, Pixel, Gesu, H3, Mr. Sliggy, Cero, Solanus, Tiggs, and Zwifta, and Sola. So big shout out to all of you guys. I really do appreciate it. So, as for topics for the show, we have Incarn versus Starlord. Basically, when to take each, because I've seen a few questions on my stream, comments, and stuff like that, asking about my opinion on it, trying to get some numbers on the kind of stuff, so we can talk about that. We got Mythic Plus essences. Also, with Incarn and Starlord, I've seen a lot of questions about why I'm taking certain stuff from Mythic Plus, what's good in Mythic Plus, that kind of thing. Is Moonkin viable in Mythic Plus? So I've actually had a change of mind as to what I thought about this recently, so I thought it'd be interesting to talk about. And then Moonkin's performance in raid. All right, cool. So we can first start off with Incarn versus Starlord and when to take each. So Starlord should probably be your default, just in general. And the reason for that being is that it's actually just like slightly better than Incarn in most situations. And it's like slightly better well-rounded. Okay, so with that being said though, Incarn does have its uses in certain situations, most notably Mythic Plus. It also does have usage whenever you need like 30-second burst, or if you're fucking around in raid with Visions of Perfection Major and you just want to play Incarn. Like, you can take it then, like, if you really don't care that much. But most of Incarn's usage comes in Mythic Plus. However, Starlord is still good in Mythic Plus. I personally prefer Incarn, but at the end of the day, like, the thought process you should be going through whenever you're trying to determine when to take each one in Mythic Plus is, are you going to be able to get 30 seconds of usage of cooldowns? This is kind of inconsistent for lower level groups or less coordinated groups whenever you don't know where you're going to be popping your cooldowns or like what you're going to be cooldowning, stuff like that. It also comes down to like comfort of cooldown usage. So similarly, like once you run through the dungeons like a multitude of times, you get a generally good idea of like where your cooldowns are going to line up, what you need to be cooldowning, that kind of thing. So Incarn gets way better with a more consistent group. So that's just like those things. Starlord though, very, very good in Mythic Plus, and there are some of the top Moonkins still running Starlord. So that's you can play it in Mythic Plus, but you can honestly take either one, whichever you're more comfortable with is what I'd recommend. As for the 30 seconds of burst thing, that rarely comes up, so you could probably also take Incarn for like world questing or something like that. But it's not like a staple option. Like you could also probably take it for Lady Ashvane, like a burn phase. But Starlord should technically be better for that fight overall. So that's just one of those things. All right, as for Mythic Plus essences, for lower level content, okay, so my opinion of this has changed a lot lately. For low level content, Essence of the Focusing Iris Major, so that I-Beam, it does a fuck ton of damage. You should take that as the major. Conflict and Strife and Purification Protocol should be for the minor, because on lower level content, trash dies too quickly. Your pulls should technically be bigger and less frequent, as opposed to higher level stuff where you're like trying to chain pull and chain pulling smaller packs kind of thing. So that would increase the overall performance of Essence of the Focusing Iris. So for lower level stuff, you should take it. Also, if you're not very comfortable with your cooldowns or how you're playing throughout the dungeon, or like you don't really know what's going to be pulled if you don't do Mythic Plus consistently, Essence of the Focusing Iris is a very good staple choice. You can't really go wrong. However, for higher level content, Visions of Perfection Major is very fucking sick. And then basically, as for the minor slots, you're either going to be playing Conflict and Strife, 100% of the time, Conflict and Strife, basically, rank 3. And then either Purification Protocol or Essence of the Focusing Iris Minor, depending on the dungeon. So basically, Iris Minor should come in stuff like King's Rest and Seth Rallis. Purification Protocol Minor, pretty much everywhere else. Reason for that being is that the cooldowns and the Visions Minor proc and just procking your cooldown on packs like randomly is very fucking strong, and it'll allow for you to have some insane burst. You need to make sure that you also don't overwrite the Visions of Perfection proc with your cooldown, because then you're losing a lot of damage value. So Visions of Perfection is way better for higher level content, especially if you're able to, if you have like a clear understanding of like how to play around it and you play around the procs very well, then it is very good. So those are what you should be looking to play for Mythic Plus Essence wise. It's kind of weird, and Visions of Perfection Major kind of takes a little bit of time to get used to. I know I was struggling with it initially and was like, maybe not. I tried out Condensed Life Force. I think Condensed Life Force is okay. I think it's like strictly worse than Visions of Perfection for similar niche, not niche, but like a similar damage profile. I think Condensed Life Force is just like straight up worse. It's also harder to use. So moving forward with that, we're going to talk about Mythic Plus as a whole. So we're talking about like more of like the meta game. So Moonkin's viability in Mythic Plus. You guys are going to love this, but it seems like Balanced Druid is actually really good in Mythic Plus right now. I know one of the top Mythic Plus teams has a Balanced Druid player. His name is Senki. Very nice guy. He played in Team Pualuka for last MDI. Played Balanced Druid for one of the maps, I think. But yeah, so he's been playing Moonkin in Mythic Plus. They're like the top team right now. They're running a Moonkin. However, and it's very good for the reason that it's always been good. Solar Beam is sick. Trees are still sick. Their single target damage is insane. So, and you should still be playing towards the single target damage. That's why you play Visions of Perfection for high level content. But it's only really good for stuff that is like key pushing. Balanced Druid is still like relatively unkillable, especially if you're playing Conflict Minor. You're going to have like just a ridiculous amount of damage reduction from versatility, so that kind of stuff. But it is very comp dependent. And there are only a couple comps that I would recommend playing with. First of which being DPS comps is what I'm referring to, is DPS comp dependent. First of which being Demon Hunter, Outlaw Rogue, Balanced Druid, and the second one being double Outlaw Rogue, Balanced Druid. And the reason for that being is that Balanced Druid's on-demand AoE, unsurprising to probably all of you, is pretty shit. So you have to compensate that by bringing classes that are better at AoE. Your job as a Moonkin will be generally to deal with the beguiling, to single target down priority targets, nothing that's really changed, and then doing just insane boss damage. With Bloodlust, I'll end up ending a boss at like 45k DPS because most of the time bosses will end up being in like the 2:30 to 3 minute range, so it's like almost perfect timing for Visions of Perfection. So that's how you play that. As for how to deal with beguiling, there's some interesting stuff that you have to deal with. For Enchanted Emissary, most of the time, your healer should deal with it. However, in certain packs, you, as a Balanced Druid, you're going to have to knock back the Enchanted Emissary, and the reason for that being is because your healer will have to heal. This will end up happening in stuff like Underrot, where there's like the Feral Blood Swarmers. This will also end up happening in stuff like King's Rest, where the Berserker Bleeds. Like basically times that require a decent amount of single target throughput, healing from your healer. You as a Balanced Druid are going to have to deal with the Enchanted Emissary. Emissary of the Tides, Most of the time, if you're running with the Resto Druid, they'll spam root it for you. However, sometimes you just gotta do the bitch job. It's also important to note that if you use trees on a pack that has an Emissary of the Tides in it, it will only taunt the Tides. That can be useful for some situations, but that can also be really annoying. For usefulness, if the Tides is inside the pack and you have some kicks that need to be kicked in a second, you could use trees on the Tides. It'll only taunt the Tides. Your tank can yoink the pack back, and then the cast will be no longer protected. So that's a way that you can actually just play around it, but that requires a level of coordination that is lacking if you don't have voice, or you don't have or if your tank doesn't have a very good understanding of how trees work. As for Void Emissary, making sure that you have your cooldowns available for that's pretty good. That's another reason that Visions of Perfection is super sick, is because if you proc your cooldown on the Void Emissary, then you will do a sizable amount of damage. Balanced Druid is also good on the Void Emissary because you have dots. You can dip in and out of line of sight for less damage loss than other people, which is coordinating with the dots, plus you're ranged. So Void Emissary doesn't punish ranged DPS as hard, but still not optimal. Making sure that you have your cooldowns available to be able to nuke that down is most of the time going to lend yourself some success. So all of that kind of converges together to increase Balanced Druid's viability in Mythic Plus by a pretty decent amount. I've had a lot of runs as of late that I've been breaking 45 to 50k DPS in most dungeons that I'm playing, which came to my surprise because I thought Balanced Druid's damage was going to be absolutely dog shit still. So rogues will end up at 55 to 60. If you're ending up at 45 to 50, that's within the margin of playable. And if you're running with a Demon Hunter, you're going to have even more, but I'm pretty sure Double Outlaw's Balanced Druid's best comp. As for what tank it should play with, I think I've been enjoying playing with Brewmaster a little bit more, but Prot Warrior is also pretty good, so either of those two are very strong. I think Brewmaster's utility lends itself to playing with a Moonkin a little bit better than a Protection Warrior, just because of how the pulls are set up. But either one is fine, so you don't have to worry about that. For healers, you should still be playing with the Resto Druid, because Resto Druid is the best, and it's going to allow you to do more damage by not having to deal with the Beguiling. But if you have a Mistweaver Monk and a Holy Paladin, you're going to have to do way less damage, because you're going to have to deal with all the Beguiling mobs by yourself pretty much, which is pretty shit. Okay, so as for Moonkin's performance in Raid, it's pretty strong for every single fight. I would say it's definitely a top tier DPS, but I don't feel like it's the best for any fight. I feel like for some fights, there's some of those melee DPS like Fury Warrior and Demon Hunter and Assassination Rogue that are better than Balanced Druid at some things. And then for some of the multi-dot fights, you get stuff like Shadow Priest and Shadow Priest that are better than Balanced Druid. So it's the best for none, but it's very strong on pretty much every fight. And the reason for that being is that sustained single target from Conflict and Strife and Arcanic Pulsar and Streaking Stars and stuff like that, pretty fucking stupid. Also, the burst DPS is also very good. In addition, multi-dot cleave is always going to be fine for us because we actually don't get a damage loss from multiple targets, unlike some classes like Rogue Hunter, Demon Hunter, Warrior. Well, I mean, I guess they get damage increases, but not at the same level for stuff like Queen's Court and Zakul, right? Because they're just as they're spawned far away is the root of the issue. So the stuff, the fights that it seems like it's the best for is Abyssal Commander Savara. Obviously, if you get the Toxic enchant not moving, you're going to absolutely crank that fucking boss and you're going to destroy it. Two-phasing Ashfane also seems pretty good for it just because of how the cooldowns line up. Basically, you will just end up using your Condensed Life Force plus your cooldown on both of these shield breaks, which will allow you to... You should be close to the top for damage on the main target whenever... after the shield breaks. You should be close to top damage on it, especially since you have both your 3-minute cooldown and your Condensed Life Force up for every single set. You'll end up using that on a 1 minute and a 4 minute timer-ish. But that's just for the 2-phase strategy. For the 3-phase strategy, I think Balanced Druid is a little bit worse damage-wise. However, the cooldowns line up really well. Plus, your survivability is pretty much unmatched by most classes. I think Shadow Priest's survivability is a little bit better, but most classes' survivability is just a little bit worse than Balanced Druid, especially if you are playing Conflict Miner and Barkskin is a sick cooldown. Queen's Court, also another very good Balanced Druid fight, and the reason for that being is that just 2 targets for sustained prolonged periods of time with target swapping required on the Sparks, right up Balanced Druid's alley. This fight is more or less making sure that you rotate through your defensives properly, you understand the fight timings, that kind of thing. Zakul, multi-dotting the summoners cross room is also very nice. The visions of Zakul, or those little ads, I think they're called visions of Zakul, need to die relatively quickly, so dotting them with Twin Moons, because you don't lose a ton of damage by taking Twin Moons on Zakul, so you're going to be multi-dotting like all the little ads plus the summoners, and overall that's going to be pretty good for Balanced Druid relative to other classes, because those ads have to die, because if they transform into the big goblin thing, then you're going to instantly wipe. Is like the crux of that. And then we have Queen of Shara, which Queen of Shara is phase 1 is like multi-dot, phase 2 is like multi-dot and target swapping. Phase 2 is like a single target damage burn, which Moonkin is good for. Phase 3, again, your cooldowns line up really well in phase 3, so you're gonna just absolutely delete one of those Venom Tongue ladies. And then phase 4, there are better classes for phase 4. I think Destruction Lock and Fire Mage are 2 notable classes that are probably top tier for phase 4. However, Balanced Druid is still pretty good. Like, as long as you're not trolling your raid with dropping the Rift out and like on your console, or getting hit by the Piercing Gaze, or getting lasered, you should be fine. A pretty good class for Ashar overall, just because of the survivability and the flexibility of how the class plays. And that sends a testament to how the class functions, is that it is so fucking flexible. It is the best in no singular situation, but it is very good at most. I would like to see an AoE buff, because I feel like our AoE is just in a uncomfortably low situation. But at the end of the day, you gotta play with what you got. Not really too much you can do about it. So, I mean, I actually want to talk about our AoE. I know I didn't say that I want to, but now that I really am thinking about it, it's a shame that Purification Protocol Miner, as an essence, does more damage than Fury of Elune in a Mythic Plus dungeon. It's just hilarious to me that's even a thing, because Fury of Elune as a talent is really fucking cool, but our whole entire tier 100 row actually does no damage, and I don't really know why. Most of our talent row actually doesn't do a ton of damage. Like, most of our talents in general don't really do a lot, but Fury of Elune will end up in a Mythic Plus dungeon being somewhere from like 3 to 5% of my DPS, which is like the exact same as Purification Protocol Miner ends up at, which I'm just like, it's so stupid, because in addition to that, Starfall is a worthless ass button. So our top damage on AoE, where we're casting Starfall, will be like fucking Sunfire or something. And it's an abomination. And I'm thoroughly upset. And the way that they need to fix it is basically either Lunar Strike or Starfall. Either Lunar Strike needs to give more AP whenever you hit more targets. I guess that would fix it. And then like a Starfall buff, right? So that would fix that. Or Starfall needs like a secondary component to it, which is what I would think would be a little bit better of an option. Give it a secondary component that the more targets you hit with it, the less astral power it costs for the next cast, similar to how Revolving Blades works for Demon Hunter. Which, that would make Starfall better and feel better to hit on more targets, while not allowing it to be OP on one target ever again, right? I think, and I'll say this until the end of time, I still think Balanced Druid and Starfall should be balanced around hitting the button on 2 targets, because the class feels better like that. But right now, for single target, Balanced Druid actually feels pretty good. It just occurs in issues. It has issues on Mythic Plus style pulls, where you have like 5 or 6 targets where you're like, I guess I'm still single targeting, which fucking sucks ass. And Blizzard should be ashamed for allowing Balanced Druid to sit in the state that it has been sitting for so long. So I guess that's just my little rant on that. It's thoroughly frustrating, and Balance Druid is still good in Mythic Plus because it's fucking broken utility-wise and has all the tools in the world to be able to deal with everything. But it does kind of trigger me, the fact that Starfall is a fucking just unpressable button. You could take it off your bar and you would do about the same damage. So that's that. Anyways, so I hope you guys enjoyed this month's Moonkin Monthly. I've been kind of busy lately with the MDI. Hope you guys have been enjoying watching me on that. Checking me out on the weekends. I know most of you are probably watching classes and stuff like that, but hope you guys take some time out to watch me do the MDI stuff. And that will be it for me today. We're going to continue to have more content coming up. We're going to have some boss guides. We're going to have some Mythic Plus analysis videos. We still got our weekly Titan Forge podcast. Thank you guys all for supporting that shit. I really, really, really appreciate it. Dratnos, Trell, and myself have been loving doing it, and we are going to continue doing it. So thank you guys so much for the support on that. And with that said, make sure you check out all the stuff down in the description. I got a Discord. I got a Patreon. I got a Twitch stream. You can check out any of it. Any of the support, just watching the video also fucking owns. You guys are sick. I love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Later, guys.